Good morning and welcome to our webinar on cultural heritage and digital asset management. This is a webinar for Tuesday, April the 19th. My name is Ricky Patten. Now, we're still getting lots more people turning up. This is by far the most popular webinar we've run in the past year. We've got around about 30 odd registrations. About half of those people are already here. So I'm going to just start off first off with some housekeeping over here. So we can still let these people turn up. All right, now then, this webinar is based a lot upon the blog that you can see, and many of you probably have already had a look at it. It's on our website. You can just go up to the DataBasics website. In the top right, you'll find a menu that will take you to blogs. This blog is still on the first page of the blog page. And it's a rather long essay. I wrote it back in February in response to reading some content from Collections Trust. Collections Trust, that many of you might know, is an organisation from the UK. It works primarily in the collection management area, but it's also branching off into digital asset management as well. They've got two papers of high level of interest. This blog and the webinar is inspired a lot by Striking the Balance, which is a general research paper that Collections Trust did late last year, surveying a whole range of cultural heritage organisations in the UK and Europe, and looking at the various issues that face them on a day-to-day basis. And you'll see that I've got a few quotes from Collections Trust in this presentation. And you can get a PDF copy of that blog. It's done in an essay format. You should see it in your go-to webinar screen there. I'm just looking at a few questions. Yes, everybody is on mute only, so you'll just be able to hear. There is in the GoToWebinar panel, you'll see there's a question area, so you can ask any questions during the presentation. Now, they're around about 15 slides, so I will keep up at a pretty brisk pace as I go through this. I've got around about 2.5 minutes per slide to talk. Now then, I will try to address questions as I go or at the end of the presentation. There was also everybody that attends or registers will get access to the recording of this. We generally take a recording. Yes, just checking that I have clicked the record button, and that will be available via our YouTube channel. So you can go into YouTube and look for DataBasics PL, and you'll find all of the different recordings that we've got of webinars. And I should say that we're going to develop this thread about cultural heritage over the next, from here to the end of Christmas. Now then, one of the things that I want to do, and I might do it in about 3 or 4 months, is starting to provide like a generic specification for how a cultural heritage organisation should approach DAMS. This webinar, it'll address a more high-level area and approach and objectives and targets of the different organisations. But what we want to drill down into is come up with a fairly detailed specification. And again, that's inspired a little bit about from where Collections Trust have come from. They have got a specification for collections management in a cultural heritage organisation, and we're thinking of coming up with something same or similar ourselves. Now, I have had a few people ask during the time that we've been promoting this webinar whether I would be available to provide this content at your organisation. Yes, definitely. I've actually got a booking already next month to go and see an organisation and do this webinar there. You know, this is a part of what we do here at DataBasics. We're very committed to the open access type of model. You know, we want to make content available to people and enrich the culture of digital asset management with our collaborators. Okay then, now let's start. We've got a good half of the people here already, and I dare say a lot more people will be dropping in during the presentation. And it's always good to start at the beginning. And for any organisation looking at a digital asset management solution, you've really got to look at what is the intention of getting a DAMS. And a lot of people that we talk to in cultural heritage, many of them got DAMS, quite some time ago. Like our history would probably start close to 20 years ago in this marketplace. And a lot of people got it then. Digital asset management that period of time ago was all about if you can't find it, you can't use it. So people there have got sort of, using DAMS for an archival process only. And that's fine. And we still deal with many organisations starting off with digital asset management, and that's what they're looking for. They're wanting some way to archive their content. And as we see more and more born digital content becoming available into organisations, we actually see that on the rise, because essentially without a digital asset management system, you will have troubles managing born digital content. But most organisations are looking at the top two items. They're looking at distribution of their content, whether that be to just within the organisation or to a wider audience, and collaboration, both within the organisation and externally. And that really provides a segue into the next slide here, which is looking at who is going to be the target audience of your DAMS solution. And I've pretty much listed it in sort of like, breadth of that audience, but it's a good idea to have this well scoped out at the beginning of any project. Another presentation that you'll see, it's available via blog and also off our YouTube, is the top 10 mistakes in digital asset management. And one of the standard mistakes that organisations make is to start off a project without, a proper objective, without a proper definition of what the overall plan will be. And that's quite disastrous, because you find yourself, as you plough forward, basically digging yourself into a hole because you didn't scope out what you wanted to do beforehand. So it's very important that you understand who your target audience are going to be. It's important not only for scaling and scoping the DAM, but also looking and targeting at what sort of content that you're going to have in the DAM, and also the processes that you're going to associate with your DAM solution to address those audiences. By far, the largest audience in an organisation is the organisation itself. That's what we see just about with everybody we deal with. But we're seeing a larger drive that people want to make their content available to the public. And you'll see more developed on this point later on, whether you're looking at an open access or a commercialisation of your digital assets. Addressing the public is quite a popular topic these days. Okay, so now then, understanding the value of your digital assets, and this is a phrase that I say virtually to any organisation looking at starting off on a digital asset management path. The key here is the understanding word, understanding the value, not just the value, but having that understanding of what that value is in terms of the digital asset and your organisation is really key to a successful project. You can start off by looking at this from whether you're going to have an open access model, so the content that you're creating is really going to be available for people under like a Creative Commons license, or whether you're going to do a commercial modelling. Now those are two typical ways that people can put in some sort of hard level costing of the value of digital assets. Others look at it, if it's just purely for an archival point of view, they look at it from their point of governance and their processes associated with maintaining that archive, which is also a good basis. Once you've got that understanding of the value of your digital assets, you're able to set specific objectives like what do you intend to do? If you're following an open access path, you may want to raise the quality of the digital assets, the digital surrogates that you have available in circulation. And that can be a specific objective, and you can set targets and milestones, and you can evaluate how you achieve those goals. If you've got a commercial model, you may be looking at selling, X number of content at a certain value and recouping cost as to, a certain value. And again, you can set those objectives, and you can look at some sort of guideline to whether you are succeeding those objectives. And that is key to any project, being able to basically judge your success. It's also important when you start looking at how much of this content you are going to process into the DAMS solution and how you're going to prioritize that content. It is a simple truth that you're never going to be able to really get on top of the 8-ball here. You're not going to have all of your digital content in the DAMS and be waiting for more to turn up. There's always going to be a backlog. That's a bit of a truth for you. And you're going to have to set priorities for the digital content, like obviously if it is of high value to you, you're going to process that first. Lower value, you trickle off for a later phase, and it also allows you to create multiple stages or phases for the project. And along with those phases, you can set objectives and you can evaluate the outcome, and that's a good thing to do within an organization. Some very pragmatic stuff here. A meaningful approach to archiving. A lot of people approach us and they're really lost with how they should approach archiving of their digital assets. And it's all got to do with value. If it's of a high value to you and also probably with an associated popularity, you should keep that content close to your main system. You shouldn't archive it away. But content that is of low value or not often retrieved, you can push that off into some other storage method. And once you have that valuation of your content, you can have a meaningful archive process. The last point here, working with a copyright licensing approach, again, depending upon the type of organization you're in, if you're, say, like in a natural history museum, you will not have many issues to do with copyright licensing as opposed to an art gallery, contemporary art gallery, for example. You will have, a lot of copyright and licensing issues to take notice of. But, you've got to associate these back to the value of your digital assets. If you're a contemporary art gallery, maybe you've got 10 collection items that are of very high value. So it's worth your while to negotiate an appropriate copyright and licensing approach for those 10 assets, because that's what you're going to retrieve value from first. Okay. Now then, this is a quote taken directly from the Collections Trust Striking the Balance paper, and it's from a chappie in the UK, and it sums up what most cultural heritage organisations are facing today. Like 20, 30, 40 years ago, there really wasn't this issue. Most organisations were subsidised to the fact that they didn't need to look at, justifying their own costs, or basically providing a break-free option for their subsidy organisations. But in the current marketplace today, this has all changed. People look at sponsorship rather than subsidies. They look at being a cost-even organisation, not actually being a burden for the public or for the governmental organisation. So, you've really got to look at ways of providing more value, more income from your activities. And one of the things, and it comes up from that Collections Trust paper, Striking the Balance, that many organisations are pursuing, is looking at managing and utilising digital assets, as a way to drive more income back to the organisation. So, what are the different types of economies we can have based upon your digital assets or digital surrogates? Now then, the first one, which is very common for many organisations these days, and is following an open access path. And by open access, we mean that content will be freely available. You can make it freely available, typically via the internet. And the idea there is that you're really going to raise public awareness about the collection that you have. This public awareness will lead to a raised interest and also a perceived value of the collection rising as well. And what does that do? It basically drives people back into the organisation, back to your building. Basically, this is what is going to make general admissions happen, and you're going to get income back from your primary revenue streams, being admissions, being things like the shop and retail, being things like your cafe and your other ways of making money, and this is very important for many organisations. A lot of people, when they start looking at digital asset management, that they think of a commercialization of their content, like, we're going to have an e-shop and we're going to start selling that content, and that's how we're going to make money back from the content. And that will work if you have content that is of specific value and people cannot go elsewhere to attain the same content. And it also requires that you've got a lot of processes in place that allows for you to commercialize your content. And that in our experience is quite a difficult thing for many organizations to achieve, and they come at high costs. And importantly, it means that you're opening up a new revenue stream, being the retail of imagery. And it's a new experience and it'll be associated with new costs, and it's basically high risk. Now then, whereas if you look at driving revenue back into your primary income streams of missions and retail and things like that, it's a low risk activity. It's something that you're already pretty good at, and anything that can push more people through the door is going to be a big win for the organisation. So having this economy based upon digital surrogates planned out for open access to the content, so to raise your public awareness, raise people's evaluation of the collection material is a very sound process for justifying more expenditure on a project like digital asset management. And another way of having an economy on your digital surrogates is to looking at working with more sponsorship or partnerships with organisations. And this can be anywhere from, a government type of sponsorships. It can be a partnership with commercial organisations. It can be the type of activities such as you might make available content to a printing organisation so they can print content or books and publications upon your collection material. Or it could be like a commercial, corporate type of commercial sponsorship, where people have access to your content to use in a limited way. And it's a pretty simple formula. Essentially, you supply digital assets to an organisation, and they return by, basically providing sponsorship for you. And it's another lucrative area to move into, and it's all about having those digital surrogates of your content available and having them easily accessible. One of the downsides of taking this sort of process that many people come up with is that the actual cost of servicing such partnerships or sponsorships can be quite high for the organisation. And generally people are looking at that from the point of view that they're doing that manually. They're actually going off and retrieving the digital assets off a file server and delivering them via old-fashioned techniques, and it's not a pleasant experience. Whereas if you use a DAMS, most DAMS will come fully equipped with a self-service type of portal, and you make that portal available to your partners or sponsors, and they can access content in a way that has been negotiated with your organisation. Then you actually lower the costs of the partnership back to your organisation. And it gives you more opportunities here. It means that you can look to do these sort of sponsorships and partnerships with an organisation in a short period of time. Maybe they're just going to sponsor, a single exhibition, or for a short period of time, like 3 months. And if you've got those lower costs, it means that you can be more flexible and be more agile in your approach to sponsorships and partnerships. Okay, now then, I'm going to change tack now. We've talked a lot about digital asset management, what it can mean to an organisation and what your strategy can be. And now I'm going to move on to a much more pragmatic sort of approach here to this topic, and look at how digital asset management and collection management sort of fit together. And this is something that we have, just about every organisation we deal with. It's an area that is discussed heatedly, we see in many cultural heritage organisations, and it's, I think, to a great extent, people see it. They make it too complex. It is quite a simple process, we find, for many organisations. These are the sorts of questions that people come up with, and yes, I am going to move on to the answers, and let's get straight on there. So that there's a few basic guidelines to take into consideration, and the first one of those is, do with a system what the system does best. A digital asset management solution is really good at storing and managing a plethora of media. So, during the actual process of your digitization program, you're going to be coming up with a whole lot of working digital assets. Stick them all into the digital asset management solution. That's just a simple approach. Once they're in there, you're going to have processes that allow you to actually manage that content, and you'll immediately reap the benefits of your DAMS system. Now, then you look at, how much content that you're going to push over into the CMS, and in what fashion are you going to do that? And this comes down to a lot upon the level of integration that is available between your DAMS and CMS. Now then, a base guideline here that we look for and we suggest to any organisation is that within their CMS, for a range of good reasons, it could just be for the visualisation point of view, it's for the record point of view, there should be the availability of the single key master digital surrogate. So for a painting, that's going to be a photograph taken from the front. From a statue, it's going to be the main shot, maybe seen from the entrance into the room that's exhibited from. And it's going to be there as a representation of the object itself. And as said, in a CMS, it may be so people can browse through the CMS and easily recognize what that object is. Now, depending upon the type of integration that you've got available to you, if you've got a high level of integration, and when you look around at digital asset management systems, this is one of the key things to check out. Does the DAM vendor have a very flexible, powerful integration platform to work with? Is it documented? Is it something that you can do, or you can get some development partners to do, or is it something that you rely on the digital asset management vendor to do? You've really got to examine all of these questions, and they're going to be very key to you. Now, if you've got a high level of integration and that integration runs with your CMS, typically how content is going to be referenced is with a link, right? You're not actually going to stick the image into the CMS, you're going to put a link there. And the reason why you're going to do that is it just means that the systems are doing what they're good at. The CMS is going to hold a whole lot of basically textual information, a link back to the digital surrogate, and when you show the CMS page, it's going to use the link and display the image, and everybody's going to be happy with that. It means that you're storing all of the digital surrogates in the DAMS itself. And it means that all of the processes that you place in the DAMS that manage the content are going to apply to that content, and you're not going to have to put in parallel processes to also manage the digital content that you're storing in your CMS, for example. That's just going to be a burden. It means things like when you update or modify the main image, the key image of your collection item, that will update automatically in the CMS without having to do anything. So best off, look at a high level of integration where you can reference the content into your CMS, and you can do this sort of referencing with a lot of more systems than just the CMS. This can be your website, your e-commerce system, a whole lot of different systems. So that's a key thing to look at. And as a fallback, if you don't have that high level of integration, it might be just a very much more simplified process. You might have a single or a limited number of digital surrogates that have been approved out of the DAMS system that you've moved across into the CMS as representational images, and also for the purposes of the CMS, which holds your ultimate record about the collection management items. It is only correct that from the CMS that you can have access to those digital surrogates. As said, it is a little bit of a fallback method. The best thing to look for is having a high level of integration. Okay, and so now then, turning that around, and from the point of view from the digital asset management system, how should you integrate the DAMS back into the acquisition process, and how should you be pulling information from the CMS back into the DAMS? Now then, the first point that we put up there, and we've done this sort of thing at more than a dozen organisations, and one of the first factors that I look at all the time is that a cultural heritage organisation is primarily going to be working their collection items, and a CMS system is core to the collection items, and we understand and recognise that. And with that understanding, you can see that a DAM system should not interfere and not hinder the operation of the CMS. That's really core. What you've got to do with the DAMs is you've got to augment the collection management system. You've got to allow it to do what it's good at and provide additional content and alleviate the day-to-day working processes and allow more opportunities for the organisation by having a DAMS process in place. Now, the DAM should feed on content from the CMS. So, this is obvious, simple level stuff, from the earliest integrations we've done, which have sort of pretty much batch-driven exports from the CMS system that go into the DAMs. And this means that when people are in the DAMs, they can search on the same key tags, being they collection numbers or being they names of collection items. They'll be able to search in the same way within the DAMs that they search within the CMS. It makes the systems easier for the actual consumers. In most cases, and in 80% of the installations that we've got, we are doing that as an overnight batch or even a weekly batch, or sometimes it's really driven about when there's been an update to the CMS. It's not like this information is changing on a minute by minute, hourly basis. So that batch sort of driven integration is usually fine for most organizations. And you've got to look at a few other items really to understand and plan how the DAMs will integrate with your CMS. And this is, the next point there is really understanding the numbers game here. As said back on some of the previous slides, you're going to have a lot of working content created during the digitization process. So you're going to have, for any particular collection items, a larger number of digital surrogates. And, in recognition of that, you've got to see that you're going to have pretty much a many-to-one relationship from your DAMs back into the CMS. So, like maybe when you start pulling that metadata from the CMS back into the DAMs, you want to have a system where that information is placed, in one location within the DAMs, maybe on that key record associated with it, and all of the other digital surrogates can be associated as additional alternatives from that key record. It means that you're not duplicating that data back into the DAMs into multiple records. It makes the whole management process much easier. Now, you've also got to understand that, and again, this is one of those factors of life, that pretty much you're going to have more collection items than you're ever going to have digitized. So there are most likely going to be collection items within your organization that haven't been digitized yet. So, there's going to be records in your collection management system without matching records in your DAMs. And, so that relationship has also not got to be exclusive. So you've got to allow for a larger number of digital assets to a single CMS record, and also no digital assets to a CMS record. And your processes need to accommodate that. And you can see that there's a lot of questions and topics based upon that when we get into the search area. I'm just looking at some of the questions here. Now then, yes, we will get a recording at a later time. Somebody said, is the CMS collection a subset of the DAM collection? Classically spoken, I would say it's the other way around. Oh, I can see they've said that. Yeah, it is the other way around. Yes, the DAMS generally, depending upon the organisation, generally the DAMS is a subset of the CMS. Generally, there are more records in the CMS or collection items in the CMS than have been digitised, but there is more individual digital assets per collection item. Yeah, okay then. All right, now then, the last item on this slide here, what to do with non-collections-based digital assets. Now, and this is actually a really simple answer here. And most DAM vendors, that they work in more than one marketplace. And for many of us, working with the marketing team or people in retail is very core to our business. And, this is where all of this non-collections-based digital assets are going to be about. I do not suggest you put in a DAM system for the collection items and another DAM system for the non-collection items. I've seen people do that. I'd struggle to see the justification. I think you're making things difficult for yourself, but it is generally a much simpler process than many people understand. Having you have publicity shots, or you have shots of the actual building that you're in, staff shots, you have retail shots, all of these sort of digital assets, and they can be very easily managed into the DAM system. Okay, now, whilst you're thinking about that whole integration between the CMS and the DAMS, you've also got to think about the digital assets themselves. They have their own life cycle, and this can be quite separate and also different from a CMS record. So for the start, for any organisation, and this is something that I see people not grasping, up front, you need to have definition of the different stages of your digital asset lifecycle. And this is a topic in itself. We could have at least one webinar on this whole topic, and you can see in that middle statement there, the life cycle of a digital asset, from the point that it's actually captured through to, an initial evaluation of the content, whether it's not blurry, whether it's correctly taken, the ingestion into the DAMS, which is when the whole process starts, and that ingestion process not only is just the cataloging process, but also the vetting and the final approval of that. Once it's been approved, it's released for usage. You want to have tracking and auditing of the usage of the content, depending upon the value of your digital asset. Remember one of those early slides there? But depending upon the value of your digital assets, you might want to replace it with a higher quality one later on. Eventually you're going to archive that content. It will happen almost all the time. And in some cases, you might do disposal of your digital assets. And you've got to have that whole plan in place. And as said, that plan, the digital asset lifecycle, it's going to be separate from what's happening with your collection management system. But at the same time, it's not got to interfere with it. And the integration between the two systems have got to be effective. So for example, if you are going to dispose a digital asset record, you've got to make sure that you haven't got any links remaining in the CMS system, because basically the links are going to be broken. You're going to have a much better process to ensure that you've got a record of any CMS records that are linked to a digital asset, so at the time of disposal you can address that before it is disposed. And next point there, and this whole area of disposal is something that we deal with, in cultural heritage, but also in many different organisations as well. And it's got to do with the continuation of the digital surrogate versus the continuation of the collection item. Now then, in some cases you may dispose of the collection item, and the copyright licensing dictates that you need to also dispose of any digital surrogates. That's a fairly simple process. At other times that there isn't a requirement for that, and there's no reason why you should not actually retain that digital surrogate. And in some cases, say if you're looking at natural history and you're looking at collection items that have a very short-lived cycle, so that might be biological or flora or fauna, the actual digital surrogates became your main record of the item, and it's something that you do want to retain after the collection item has in itself been disposed of. Alrighty. Okay, and so we're into the final stages here. I do want to wrap up in the next 5 to 10 minutes. As I said, there will be some times for more questions towards the end here. Now then, this item here is very important, and we've developed a topic here where we've got collection management, we've got digital asset management, there is relationship between them, it's very important, but we've also explored that there are going to be cases of more records in the DAMS for a single collection item. There's going to be sometimes no digital surrogate for collection items, and vice versa. Now then, when you then get to the point of consumption, and this is where you've really got to plan your system in any digital asset management strategy from the point of view of the point that a consumer goes and does a search and retrieve. And this is what people don't do a lot. You spend a lot of time looking at the early stages of the digital asset life cycle, but what you've really got to do is ensure that when the person goes to access the content, they can find it simply and easily, and it is pertinent to their query. So when a person comes along and sticks in dinosaur, they've got to see all of your content to do with dinosaur. And because of this complex association between collection management, digital asset management records, they've got to be able to see collection management records that relates to their search term. They've got to see digital assets that relate to the collection items that relate to their search terms. And they've also got to be able to see digital assets that relate to their search terms that might have no collection management records with them. Now then, this is called a federated search. It's something that you see in many corporate organisations and large government organisations do on a regular basis. And the point here is that a lot of people come to us and they say, well, can we do this in the DAMS? Or can we do this in the collection management system? The answers are no. Stick to having a DAMS, do digital asset management collection, doing collection management. Do not try to do a federated search within your DAMS, for example. It will lead to a duplication of content and a inefficient usage of storage space is what they lead to, as well as a whole lot of unnecessary processes to reconcile the duplication of content. What you really want to do is have something that can do this federated search, and it's not high tech. Most organizations can provide you some sort of search engine that will work across two different sources and provide answers to one search query. And again, it's going to be using links, so when a person gets that list of responses, they can click on it and it's going to take them into the appropriate system. It's pretty simple stuff. Okay then, now then, this is my last slide before we reach the conclusion. Who is going to benefit from a DAMS most? Now then, there is a wide range of different answers to this question, and it depends a lot upon what the organisation does and what the collection is all about. And of course, if you've got multiple different collections, as most people do, will also differ depending upon your various collections. Now then, a simple stuff working from the bottom level up. If you're a natural history museum, you don't have issues to do with copyright and licensing, and therefore you can benefit a lot from your digital surrogates. You can do anything you like with them pretty much, and it just means that the complexity is less. It means if you're going to do an archive process, that's simple. If you're going to do an open access project with the public, it's also very simple to do. So, that means that these type of organisations have a lot to benefit from a DAM system. Now, it doesn't mean that organisations that do have large copyright licensing issues shouldn't get a DAMS. I don't recommend that at all. It means that you just need to address those copyright and licensing issues more completely in your consideration of the placement of the DAMS. So as I gave the example before, in a contemporary gallery, you might choose the top 10 items, and you may ensure that the copyright licensing of those is suitable for you to benefit from them in your DAM system. Next, now we move to some more pragmatic stuff. Now, for many organisations, and this is core to why people got DAMS maybe 10 or 20 years ago, and it's still relevant today, you might have high costs of access to digital assets in your organisation, and having a DAMS in place will reduce those costs. And this could be anywhere from your internal staff searching on a suitable image, and that may be for marketing purposes, or it could be for research purposes, or it could be for general curation, any of those reasons. And having a DAM system is going to reduce those costs, make content more available to people, and thus you'll benefit from the DAMS. The next point there, and we see more of this as there will be more born digital content moving into the future. And as said before, born digital content, and typically we are thinking of moving images, i.e. video or audio, and generally they are in highly complex formats, which means that a general workstation in a cultural heritage organisation just simply is not geared to play these complex video or audio files. But by putting them into a DAMS, most DAMS should be able to provide a browser-based playable version of this content. And so essentially, without a DAMS system, born digital content may not be available in any way to most users within the organisation. And that's really a technology barrier, and having a DAMS solution in there will mean that you can overcome that and make the content more available. Now, the big winners out there with the DAM system and those following digital strategies, and again, this whole thing from Collections Trust, striking the balance paper that they did last year, the people who can really win out with a very good digital strategy encompassing a DAM solution are those people looking at an open access strategy. And as said before, like what you want to do with this open access strategy is to raise public awareness of the collection material within the organisation, and drive people through your door and raise revenue, and do it via simple and easy methods that you already control. So for those people, having a digital asset management strategy is a prerequisite. You can't really do that without a DAM solution. Okay then, so now just wrapping up here, and I'm looking for more questions here. As said, just use the GoToMeeting question panel on the screen there and ask more questions as you need. The opportunity for digital distribution, which is what a DAM system is all about. And this is true for any organisation putting in a DAM system. You don't put in DAMs for the point of view of just cataloguing. Yes, there are cases when you could be doing it for just purely the archival point of view. It is not as popular. It used to be popular 10, 20 years ago. Mostly people are looking at ways of distributing their content as being the core reason why you're following down a DAMS process. And the benefit of that process will vary depending upon the opportunity it offers to the organisation. How that opportunity does vary, it is still a task. Digital asset management still needs to be considered for you to have a future strategy, whether that be for open access or whether that purely be for the internal archival and collation of content. Okay then, now then, thank you. You've been a great audience here. I've answered the questions to date. I didn't actually start this webinar with a pre-made set of questions, so I'll wait a little bit. If anybody wants to ask any questions, I'm happy to take them. As I said up at the beginning of the presentation, you can engage with me at a later time. I might go back to one of the early slides here. Right over here. So you've got my email address there. As said, there's a lot of content on our blog page, in our YouTube channel, and if I don't hear from you, I dare say I will. Most of the people in the audience I do know, either directly or indirectly. I look forward to meeting you at some earlier stage. So as I don't have any more questions, I will wrap up the webinar at this stage. Thank you very much for attending. You've been a great audience, and we'll be keeping you updated with any future developments we've got on this digital asset management and cultural heritage thread. Thank you.